The quiet bartender no one recognized. That night was calm. The kind of night when the city breathes slow and soft. Inside a small but elegant restaurant, tucked away on a quiet street in Los Angeles. Glasses clinked gently and soft jazz hummed from the speakers. Candles flickered on the tables, casting warm light on faces deep in quiet conversation. In the middle of it all, behind a long polished wooden bar, stood a man with kind eyes and slow hands, wiping down a glass with quiet focus. No one knew he was Keanu Reeves. He wore a plain black t-shirt and jeans, his hair slightly longer than most would expect. He kept his head low, voice soft, and smile gentle. He didn't come here to be a star. He came to listen, to observe, and to understand what kind of world his restaurant really was. Yes, this was his place. He had opened it quietly months ago, with no media, no press, not even a name on the door. He called it home in his heart. But on paper, it was just a clean, peaceful space where kindness was meant to lead the way. Tonight was his third week tending the bar in disguise. To the staff, he was Ken, a polite temp bartender helping out while the regular one was on leave. To the guests, he was invisible, just another man behind the bar, and Keanu liked it that way. He liked being ordinary, because in that quiet place of no attention, he saw more clearly. But that night, something shifted. A loud voice broke the softness of the evening. "How many times do I have to tell you, Marisol? Are you that slow?" The words came sharp and cold. They didn't match the gentle air of the restaurant. Heads turned, eyes narrowed, and the laughter in the room dimmed slightly. From the kitchen doorway, a girl stood frozen. She looked about 20, with a messy ponytail, trembling hands, and a notepad she held too tightly. It was Marisol, one of the new waitresses. Keanu had noticed her the past few nights. She worked hard. Her shoes were old, her eyes often tired, but she smiled at every table, and even when no one was watching, she gave her best. The man yelling at her was Bradley, the floor supervisor. Keanu had heard whispers about him, cold, strict, sometimes too harsh, but this was the first time he saw it with his own eyes, and it stopped him completely. He froze, not because he didn't know what to do, but because he remembered something. Something from years ago. A woman with calloused hands and a quiet voice. A waitress too. His mother. He remembered how her manager once called her useless. He remembered how she had cried that night, thinking no one had seen. So Keanu didn't move. He watched. "I'm sorry," Marisol said, her voice barely a whisper. "I thought table 5 had already been served." "Thought? We don't pay you to think. We pay you to work." A sharp gasp came from an older couple nearby. A young man in a suit whispered to his date, shaking his head. The air had shifted. Something didn't feel right anymore. Keanu sat the glass down. He took a breath, and he walked out from behind the bar. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't storm. He just walked with calm, steady steps until he stood between Marisol and Bradley. The room fell silent. Bradley looked confused. "Can I help you, Ken?" Keanu didn't answer right away. He turned to Marisol. "Are you all right?" he asked softly. She nodded quickly, eyes wide, though tears shimmered at the edge. Then Keanu turned back to Bradley. "You don't need to talk to her like that." Bradley frowned. "Excuse me," I said. Keanu repeated, more slowly this time. "You don't need to speak to her like that. Not here. Not ever." "Who do you think you are?" Bradley snapped, laughing slightly. "A temp bartender lecturing me?" And that's when it happened. Someone from the corner shouted, "Wait, is that Keanu Reeves?" Gasps followed. Phones slipped from pockets. A young woman dropped her fork. A chef peeked from the kitchen door, eyes wide in disbelief. Bradley stepped back, confused, stunned. Keanu didn't react. He just looked down for a moment, then said softly, "This place is supposed to be different." He looked around the room, at every face watching. "I didn't open this restaurant to be a business. I opened it to be a place where people feel safe, where staff are treated with kindness, where no one gets spoken to like that just for trying their best." A few people clapped gently. Bradley's mouth opened slightly, but no words came out. Marisol stood still, frozen with disbelief. Keanu turned back to her and gently placed a hand on her shoulder. You didn't do anything wrong, he said. Go take a short break. I'll handle your tables. Tears fell from her eyes, but she nodded and slowly walked to the back, holding her head a little higher than before. Keanu faced Bradley again. Come to the back office, now. Without waiting, Keanu walked away. The staff looked at one another, confused, stunned, and unsure what had just happened, but one thing was clear. Kindness had just walked through the door. And it wasn't going to leave quietly. Asterisk behind the anger. Bradley's secret door to the back office clicked shut behind them. Bradley stood stiff, arms crossed. Keanu walked slowly to the small wooden desk, not saying anything for a few seconds. The air in the room was heavy, almost as still. It was quiet enough that you could hear the hum of the refrigerator in the staff break area next door. Then Keanu finally spoke. Sit down, Bradley. Bradley didn't move. Please, Keanu said again, his voice gentle but firm. With a slow breath, Bradley sat. Keanu leaned against the edge of the desk, crossing his arms not in anger, but as if to gather his thoughts. He didn't yell. He didn't point fingers. He just looked at Bradley with calm, searching eyes. Why did you speak to her like that? Keanu asked. Bradley scoffed. You saw the mess, didn't you? She was late with the table order, then forgot the drinks. We're running a restaurant, not a daycare. Keanu shook his head. You could have corrected her without tearing her down. There's a difference. Bradley said nothing. Keanu continued. I've been watching, not just tonight. I've been watching how you speak to people. Your voice may be calm to the guests, but to the staff, it's like they walk on glass. Bradley looked away, jaw clenched. I didn't hire you to scare people, Keanu said softly. Bradley's eyes narrowed. You didn't hire me. I've been here since before this place changed names, before you took over. Keanu nodded. That's true. And you were kept on because you had experience. But experience means nothing if you forget how to be kind. For a long moment, the two men just sat in silence. And then something broke. Bradley's voice, which had been sharp just minutes ago, suddenly dropped. I wasn't always like this. Keanu tilted his head. Bradley looked down at his hands, fidgeting. I used to be the one getting shouted at in kitchens, chefs throwing plates, managers barking in my ear. One day, I decided I'd never be the weak one again, Keanu said quietly. So you became the one who hurt others first. Bradley didn't answer. Keanu stood up slowly, walking toward the window that looked out into the alley behind the restaurant. He watched as Marisol sat on a crate near the back door, wiping her eyes with a napkin. She reminds me of my mother, Keanu said. Bradley looked up, surprised. My mom was a waitress. She worked double shifts and came home late with sore feet, and she was always smiling. But I heard what her managers used to say when they thought no one was listening. It broke her spirit, and I promised myself that if I ever had the chance, I'd make sure no one else felt like that under my roof. Keanu turned back to Bradley. Do you want to be the reason someone goes home crying? Bradley's face slowly shifted. The arrogance melted into something more raw. His eyes flickered with a kind of regret he hadn't shown in years. No, he said quietly. But I don't know how to stop. I don't know how to lead without being hard. If I go soft, people will walk over me. Keanu walked closer and sat beside him. Kindness isn't weakness, he said. I've been on movie sets with people who screamed all day, and I've been on others where the director just whispered, and yet everyone gave their best. Fear doesn't inspire loyalty. Respect does. A long pause followed. Then, for the first time, Bradley looked like he might actually listen. So, what now? Bradley asked. Keanu nodded slowly. You take a few days off, not as punishment but to reflect. Talk to Marisol, apologize, and if you come back, we start again. But this time with a different heart. Bradley didn't answer right away, but his shoulders sank a little, and for the first time since the shift began, he wasn't tense. He just looked tired, human, broken, but maybe willing to heal. Keanu stood and walked to the door. I'll cover your shift tonight. Go home. Bradley rose slowly. He opened the door, paused, then turned back. You really tend the bar just to see how things run. Keanu gave a soft smile. I tend the bar To see who people are when they think no one important is watching. Bradley gave a small nod and stepped out into the night. Keanu returned to the kitchen first. He walked straight to Marisol, who had just finished wiping her face and was about to re-enter the main dining area. "He's gone for now," Keanu said gently. "You don't have to worry." Marisol looked up, eyes still red. "Why did you do that?" Keanu smiled. "Because no one should be made to feel small while they're trying their best." She looked at him for a long moment, as if trying to believe him. "Thank you," she whispered. He nodded and handed her a small glass of water. "Come back when you're ready," he said. "And when you do, know that you belong here." That night, the restaurant shifted. The guests, who had seen only pieces of the scene, whispered with curiosity. Word began to spread that the man behind the bar wasn't just a quiet worker. He was Keanu Reeves. Some people asked for photos, but most respected the silence. He returned to and yet, in the kitchen, something else was happening. As Keanu wiped the counter, another young man named Jamal stepped forward. "Sir, Keanu," he said nervously, "can I ask something?" Keanu looked up with a small nod. "Of course." "Why didn't you fire him?" Jamal asked. "Most bosses would." Keanu leaned in slightly and said, "Because I saw something in his eyes. A man who forgot who he used to be, but maybe still wants to find him again." Jamal paused, then smiled slowly. "You're different." Keanu laughed softly. "Maybe. Or maybe I'm just trying to fix what I never could for my mom." The night continued. Tables were cleared. Dishes were washed. But in the heart of the kitchen, a seed had been planted. Kindness didn't just touch one person that night. It echoed. It moved from staff to staff, from table to table. And though Keanu thought his presence might be temporary, the story was only just beginning. The letter that changed everything. 2 days passed. The restaurant returned to its usual rhythm: soft jazz, candlelight, and the warm scent of rosemary bread drifting. From the kitchen, Marisol was back on shift, this time with more confidence in her steps. Jamal cracked small jokes in the kitchen. Laughter started flowing again. Something had changed in the air, and though Keanu continued tending bar quietly, the staff now looked at him with different eyes. They didn't just see a bartender. They saw someone who cared. But the peace was short-lived. On the third morning, long before the restaurant opened, Keanu arrived early to go over the supplier receipts. He entered through the back door as he always did, nodding at the baker unloading flour and eggs. A small white envelope was taped to the door of his office. His name was written on it in neat handwriting. Just Keanu. No last name, no address, nothing else. He took the envelope carefully and stepped into the office. The sun hadn't risen fully yet. Shadows still rested in the corners of the room. He sat at the desk and opened it. It wasn't long. Just a handwritten note. "You think kindness fixes everything? Not everyone wants your help. Not everyone wants to be saved. This restaurant was built on order, and soon it will return to the way it was." Someone who remembers. Keanu stared at the note for a long time. It didn't scare him, but it made his chest feel heavy. He didn't know what bothered him more, the threat itself or the pain behind the words. Someone who remembers. He placed the letter down, then picked it back up again. The handwriting looked familiar, though he couldn't place it. He ran his fingers over the indentations. Whoever wrote it had pressed hard, like they were angry or desperate. He stood and looked out the small window facing the alley. Then he quietly folded the letter and slid it into his back pocket. That evening, the restaurant was busier than usual. A local food blogger had posted a short video about the place, praising its food, but also mentioning how the owner might be Keanu Reeves. Curious guests began filling the tables. Some came just for the story, some to test the food. A few just wanted to feel the warmth that had started to buzz around the place. But Keanu stayed behind the bar, just like always. He made drinks with care. He smiled with his eyes. He watched everything. And then, during the dinner rush, it happened. Again. A crash. Plates on the floor. A sharp voice. "Are you blind? That dish cost more than your paycheck." Keanu turned. It wasn't Bradley. He was still on leave. This voice came from someone else. Sandra. She was a senior hostess. had been at the restaurant long before Keanu ever bought it. She had always been professional but cold. Tonight, she had snapped. The target of her rage, Jamal Dahi, stood near the crash site, shoulders hunched, hands shaking, holding a broom. His eyes were wide, filled with panic. "I'm sorry," Jamal said. "I lost my balance when someone brushed past me." Sandra wasn't listening. "You think sorry pays for that? Do you think that's enough?" The words came from across the room. Keanu had stepped out from behind the bar again. Silence fell over the restaurant. Again. He didn't shout. He didn't glare. But there was something in his tone, firm, steady, that made everyone freeze. He walked slowly toward Sandra and Jamal. The shards of broken plates sparkled on the floor like frost under the lights. "Sandra," he said quietly, "do you remember the note you left me this morning?" Her face twitched, then turned pale. What are you talking about?" Keanu didn't answer. Instead, he bent down, picked up a few large ceramic pieces, and gently set them aside so Jamal wouldn't cut himself. Then he looked up at Sandra. "You've been here a long time," he said. "Longer than me, longer than most, and I respect that. But what I don't respect is fear." Sandra's lips trembled slightly, but she held her posture. "I don't know what you're implying." "I'm not implying anything," Keanu interrupted softly. "I'm saying it clearly. This is the second time this week someone on my team has been humiliated in front of others, and I won't let that become normal." Jamal slowly stood up behind him. His hands still trembled. "You think softness builds a business?" Sandra snapped suddenly, her voice rising. "You think letting mistakes slide will help this place survive? The old boss ran this place with steel, and it worked." Keanu took a slow breath. "The old boss ran this place with fear," he said. "And look what it left behind: hurt, bitterness, silence." He stepped closer. "You say people don't want to be saved. Maybe you're right. Maybe not everyone does. But this isn't about saving people. It's about creating a place where no one needs saving to begin with." The words hung in the air like a wave that had just crested. Sandra looked away, her jaw tensed. But her eyes flickered with something, not anger, more like shame. She turned and walked quickly to the back, saying nothing. Keanu looked at Jamal. "You all right?" Jamal nodded slowly. "Yeah, thank you. Go get some water," Keanu said. "And take a few minutes." Jamal nodded again and disappeared into the kitchen. Keanu sighed and turned back to the staff and guests, who had all gone silent. He smiled gently. "I'll cover that table's meal," he said, pointing to the couple whose food had fallen during the crash. On the house, they smiled back, nodding in appreciation. Then, softly, the restaurant began to breathe again. Later that night, Keanu stood outside near the alley, leaning against the brick wall, hands in his pockets. He looked up at the stars. He didn't notice the person standing quietly a few feet away. Sandra. She had changed out of her uniform, ready to head home. "You were right," she said. Keanu turned. "I was trained to be harsh," she said. "That's all I ever knew. Praise felt like a weakness, and every time someone new came in, I just assumed they'd fail unless I pushed them." Keanu nodded, saying nothing. "But I don't want to be that anymore," she said. Her voice cracked. "A little. I didn't leave the letter, but I know how that person feels." Keanu looked at her closely. "Thank you for being honest." She looked down. "Do you still want me here?" He smiled. "Only if you're willing to grow with us." She nodded slowly. "I am." They stood in silence for a few seconds. Then Keanu said, "Sandra, you're not alone." "None of us are." She looked at him with tired eyes. "Then maybe there's hope for this place after all." Keanu chuckled. "I never lost hope." Inside the restaurant, the team was winding down for the night. Marisol cleared tables while humming softly. Jamal returned to the kitchen, joking with the dishwasher. Something was changing, but no one knew that a new challenge was already on its way. Because deep in the shadows of the past, someone who once managed the restaurant before Keanu, someone who had been fired for abusing power, had just seen the blog video. And he wasn't happy. The return of the man who broke them. The evening was calm again. Inside the restaurant, laughter echoed softly, candles flickered, and silverware danced gently across white plates. Keanu stood behind the bar, sleeves rolled up, polishing glasses. Marisol passed by with a tray of desserts. Jamal shared a quiet joke with the chef near the kitchen window. And Sandra, with a different posture now, one lighter and more grounded, guided guests to their tables with warmth that surprised even herself. The past few days had been healing. Kindness was spreading like music no one could hear, but everyone could feel. But outside the restaurant, something darker moved. His name was Richard Crane. He once owned the place when it went by another name, Steel and Stone. A fine dining experience, cold and sharp, where employees feared eye contact and laughter was considered unprofessional. Richard ruled through power, through fear, and when business dropped, he blamed the staff. He yelled, he threatened, he made people cry behind locked doors. Until the place was sold. Until Keanu quietly bought it, restored it, and breathed new life into it, not just with design or food, but with purpose. Richard had been gone for a year. He had vanished after several lawsuits from former staff. No one heard from him. Most assumed he'd left town. But he hadn't. He'd been watching. And when the viral video of a quiet bartender being revealed as Keanu Reeves spread through local food blogs, Richard recognized the space. His space. And it burned inside him. The next evening, just before the dinner rush began, the restaurant felt strangely quiet. Staff moved quickly, checking candles and folding napkins, but something in the air felt off, like a storm behind glass. Keanu arrived as always on foot, quietly, dressed in black and calm. As he stepped into the kitchen to greet the team, the front door opened. The hostess turned, ready to smile, but her face froze. In stepped a tall man in a gray suit, eyes sharp like knives, mouth tight with judgment. He didn't wait to be seated. He looked around slowly, as if measuring the air. Then he said, "Nice to see someone cleaned up the mess I left." His voice was loud enough for the staff and half the guests to hear. Sandra, just stepping out from the kitchen, stopped mid-step. Jamal dropped the cloth he was using. Marisol whispered under her breath. Oh no, Richard Crane had returned. Keanu walked out from the kitchen, wiping his hands on a towel. He stopped when he saw him. For a moment, no one spoke. Richard smiled without warmth. You must be the man who bought this place. Keanu walked forward slowly, standing just a few feet away from him. That's right, he said calmly. I'm Keanu. Richard looked him up and down. Well, Keanu, I watched the video. You playing bartender like some saint. Impressive. Trick, fooled the public, didn't you? Keanu didn't react. Richard continued. This place used to run on discipline. Numbers, order. It was efficient. It made money. And it broke people. Keanu said quietly. Richard chuckled. People are soft now. They need to toughen up. The world doesn't run on feelings. Keanu took a slow breath. This restaurant runs on people, not fear, not threats, just people, trying their best and growing. Richard stepped closer, lowering his voice. You don't know what it took to build this. I put years into this place, and you've turned it into a feelings lounge. Keanu didn't flinch. You built a prison. I'm building a home. For the first time, Richard's mask cracked. I didn't come here to argue, he said. I came to tell you that you don't deserve it. A hush fell across the room again. Guests turned in their seats. Forks paused. Drinks stopped midair. This restaurant is legally mine, Keanu said calmly. You signed it over. Your time here is done. Richard sneered. We'll see. I have friends in places you don't even understand. And if I can't get it back, I'll destroy its name. Keanu stepped even closer. He didn't shout. He didn't shake. He whispered. You lost this place the moment you stopped seeing the people inside it. Richard stared at him, frozen, for just a second. And then, a small voice came from behind. He's right. Everyone turned. It was Marisol. She stepped forward, voice shaking, but eyes strong. You made me cry on my second day at Steel and Stone. I was 17. You called me stupid in front of the entire floor. I quit that night. I only came back after he bought it. I never thought I'd feel safe in a restaurant again. Then Jamal spoke. You told me once I wasn't smart enough to handle plating. You didn't even know my name. Then Sandra. You Made me believe that harshness was leadership, that silence was strength. But I've learned more from him in 1 week than I learned from you in 2 years." Richard looked around, stunned. He tried to speak, but no words came. And then something no one expected happened. The guests who had been listening began to clap, not loudly, not like a show, but gently, respectfully. Richard turned, red in the face, and walked out of the restaurant. Without another word, the door closed behind him with a soft click. Keanu stood quietly. He turned to the staff and said, "Thank you." They all looked at him with pride, for standing, for staying, for changing something none of them thought could be changed. Later that night, Keanu found a new note on his desk, but this one wasn't angry. It was scribbled on a napkin. "Thank you for making me feel like a person again. I'll work harder. I'll speak softer. I'll learn." Sandra, he folded the napkin and placed it gently in his pocket, but the peace wouldn't last long. The next morning, a message appeared in the restaurant's public reviews. 1-star rating. No name. Just one sentence. "You're not done with me yet." Richard wasn't finished. And Keanu knew it. Sabotage in silent sight started with a smell. The dinner rush had barely begun when a strong, sour odor crept from the kitchen into the main dining area. Guests began wrinkling their noses. One woman asked the server politely, "Is something burning?" Another whispered to her husband, "Did they change the recipe?" Keanu was behind the bar, stirring a drink when he caught the scent too. His eyes narrowed. He passed the shaker to Marisol and walked straight to the kitchen. Inside, chaos was already growing. Jamal stood near the stove, waving a towel wildly. "The sauce, it's spoiled. I just opened the new crate. It's all bad." The head chef, Mario, leaned in to inspect a large pot. His face turned pale. "It smells like vinegar and mold. This batch was sealed this morning." Keanu checked the storage cooler. The air inside was wrong, damp to warm. The temperature monitor blinked red. The cooling system had been tampered with. Keanu said nothing. But inside, a storm was building. Then came the second blow. Sandra came rushing from the front, holding a guest's phone. Double quotes Keanu, she said breathlessly. "Look at this. Someone posted a video saying the restaurant has rats in the kitchen." Keanu took the phone and watched. It was a poorly shot video, dark, shaky. It showed a blurry corner with what looked like movement under a shelf. The voice in the background claimed it was taken in their kitchen, that the food was unsafe, that the restaurant was a celebrity scam. Keanu froze. "This wasn't shot here," Jamal said quickly. "We've never had rodents. Health inspection cleared us last month." Keanu agreed. "But people won't know that. They'll see the video and believe it." Mario said slowly, "This feels planned." And that's when Keanu knew. Richard. This wasn't just bitterness. It was revenge. That night, half the guests canceled their bookings after reading the fake review and watching the video. Within hours, 2 news outlets had picked it up online. The headlines read, "Actor-owned restaurant under fire for health violations. KeanuReeves restaurant too good to be true." Keanu sat in the office late into the night with his laptop open, refreshing the article page. The comments stung, even when he knew they weren't true. "Celebs think kindness runs a kitchen? Guess not. Never trust a guy who plays pretend for a living to run a real business." Each line felt like a weight pressing deeper on his chest. He looked around the office, the same space where he had once offered Bradley a second chance. The same desk where he read Sandra's apology. The same chair where he sat with Marisol, just to remind her she mattered. This place had been built on hope. But now, hope was cracking. He leaned forward, head in his hands, and whispered, "What if I wasn't enough?" But Keanu wasn't alone. The next morning, before the sun rose, he arrived early to clean and think. When he opened the front door, he found something unexpected. Marisol. Sandra. Jamal. Even Mario. All standing outside, holding cleaning supplies, tools, and thermometers. "We came early," Marisol said. "We want to help. We'll go over every inch of this place," Sandra added, "top to bottom." Jamal stepped forward. "We know what's real. Let's show them." Keanu looked at them, speechless. Then quietly said, "Thank you." The day turned into a whirlwind. They scrubbed everything. They recorded their own video of the spotless kitchen and filtered Raw, honest. Mario displayed the last health inspection report on the main window, dated just a month ago with a perfect score. Keanu posted a calm message on the restaurant's page. We believe in transparency, truth, and our people. This space is clean. This team is strong. We are still here. With kindness, Keanu. The video quickly gained attention, not just because of who he was but because of how sincere it felt. No filters, no music. Just a man standing beside his team, showing the truth. Messages of support poured in. Don't let the haters win. We believe in you, Keanu. Any chance I can book a table this weekend? But Richard wasn't done. That evening, just before dinner service began, a man in a suit arrived with a clipboard and badge. Health inspection, he announced. The staff stiffened. Even Mario held his breath. But Keanu nodded. We've been expecting you. Please come in. For the next 2 hours, the inspector moved through every inch of the restaurant. He checked freezers, measured temperatures, swabbed counters. He asked questions, took notes. The staff watched in silence. Finally, the inspector returned to the front. He looked at Keanu, then at the team gathered nearby. This is the cleanest kitchen I've seen all month, he said. Relief washed over everyone like a wave. Some laughed softly. Marisol wiped a tear. The inspector added, whoever made those claims clearly had an agenda. Nothing here matches their story. He handed Keanu a signed report and left. As the door shut behind him, the team erupted in gentle celebration. High fives, hugs, deep breaths. Keanu smiled for the first time that day. Late that night, Keanu sat again at the bar. This time, the place was full, not just with guests but with energy, heart, hope. A guest approached him and said, I've been eating out for years, and I've never seen a place with so much soul. Keanu nodded. Thank you. But inside, he still felt something unresolved. Because Richard's threats weren't just about food or posts. They were about breaking something deeper. And Keanu knew the final confrontation hadn't come yet. At closing time, a letter was slipped under the front door. Keanu picked it up, unfolded it. It read, next time, I won't just spoil food. I'll spoil your name. You can't build dreams where fear used to live. Keanu folded the letter slowly. But this time, he didn't feel fear. He felt ready. Because this wasn't just about a restaurant anymore. It was about standing up for something no one could burn down. With lies. Asterisk the night the city listeneth. City was buzzing. After the fake health scandal. After the truth video. After the inspection cleared everything, Keanu's restaurant was suddenly at the center of attention. Not just because of who owned it, but because of how he responded. He didn't fight back with lawyers. He didn't post angry rants. He stood tall with his team, spoke calmly, and let kindness be his shield. Now, the media wanted interviews. Celebrities sent messages of support. And guests lined up outside hours before opening, just to taste what many now called the most human restaurant in the city. But Keanu knew one thing. Richard Crane wasn't finished. On the third Friday since the sabotage, the line outside stretched around the block. Inside, every table was full. Laughter filled the air like music. Marisol balanced plates with grace. Jamal passed dishes to the chefs with a smile. Even Sandra, who once barked at waiters, now took time to ask if they'd eaten. Keanu stood behind the bar, hands on the counter, watching with pride. This place wasn't just surviving. It was shining. And that's when it happened. Richard walked in through the front door. He didn't speak, didn't shout, didn't even glare. He walked straight to the center of the restaurant and clapped loudly 3 times. Everyone stopped. Forks, glasses, voices, everything went still. Richard turned in a slow circle and said, "Let's give a round of applause to the actor who thinks kindness can keep a business alive." Some guests whispered. Others looked at Keanu in confusion. Richard stepped onto an empty chair. He held up a piece of paper. "This," he said, "is a list of every failed restaurant. KeanuReeves tried to help before this one. 3. All closed. None lasted more than a year." Keanu didn't move. Richard raised his voice. "He thinks playing a hero on screen means he can fix the world in real life. But this isn't a movie. This is real. And when the next bad week comes, when the next fake review shows up, he'll be gone. Because that's what actors do. They leave once the scene ends. A few people looked toward Keanu. His hands were still on the bar. Still calm. Richard kept going. You want to believe in fairy tales? Fine. But don't come crying when reality hits. And just as he was about to step down, Keanu moved. He didn't shout. He didn't grab a mic. He walked to the center of the room and said, softly, "May I speak?" The guests nodded. Even Richard froze. Keanu stepped up beside the chair, but didn't stand on it. He just looked around the room. And then he spoke, not like a star, not like a boss, but like a man who had once watched his mother cry behind a kitchen door. I didn't open this place because I wanted fame, he said. I opened it because I wanted to build something different. He looked at Richard. You tried to break it with fear, with lies, with shame. But here's what you don't understand. He turned back to the guests. When a guest is rude, my staff doesn't yell, they respond with patience. When someone spills water, we don't snap, we help. When someone feels small, we remind them they matter. Not because it's good for business, but because it's good for the soul. He took a breath. Kindness doesn't mean weakness. It means strength that doesn't need to shout. Someone clapped. Then another. Then the whole room. Richard stepped down slowly, face pale, lips pressed tight. Keanu looked at him one last time and said, you built walls with fear. We built bridges with care. And that's why you lost. Richard turned and walked out. He didn't say another word. He never came back. 3 days later, KeanuReeves' restaurant was featured on national news, not just for the food, but for how it became a symbol of dignity and leadership. People across the country shared their stories. Waiters, janitors, dishwashers, people who had been hurt by bad bosses, now finally feeling seen. Keanu didn't give a press tour. He didn't write a book. He stayed behind the bar, serving drinks, cleaning tables, asking his team how they were doing. Because, to him, the story was never about him. It was about the Marisols, the Jamals, the Sandras, the people who were once overlooked and now stood tall. Weeks later, a woman came in with a little boy. He carried a small note in his pocket. He walked up shyly and gave it to Keanu. Keanu opened it and read, "Thank you for protecting my mom when no one else did. She comes home smiling now." It was signed with a crayon drawing of Marisol and her son. Keanu bent down, smiled, and gave the boy a fist bump. Then went back to work. That night, as the team sat down to eat dinner together after closing, Jamal said, "You know, this place used to feel like just a job. Now it feels like," he looked around, "a family." Keanu looked up and smiled.